welcome to the deep dive. The speed at which AI is evolving is, well, it's frankly staggering. And with that speed comes a much sharper edge on the threat landscape.
It really does.
I mean, think about this. January 2025, that low-end depot breach, hackers apparently built an AI-powered phishing kit in, what, less than an hour?
Under an hour. Yeah, that's a report.
Less than 60 minutes, and they snagged data on 16 million people. That's a lightning-fast escalation of risk right there.
It truly is, and it highlights the core problem, doesn't it? The same AI that holds so much promise also hands these incredibly powerful new tools to people with, well, malicious intent.
Exactly.
We're seeing this play out all the time. New models get more capable. Defenses are struggling to keep pace, and, regulations are still trying to figure things out. It's really a high-stakes race.
Absolutely. The AI that can find bugs in software can just as easily help someone exploit those bugs. It's a double-edged sword. So for this deep dive, we've been digging through some pretty crucial research to try and understand how the very labs building these advanced AIs are tackling this security challenge.
Right. The ones creating the power are also thinking about controlling it.
Our mission today, really, is to explore the approaches of two of the biggest players, DeepMind and OpenAI. We'll be looking at DeepMind's papers, taking a responsible path to AGI, and their one on evaluating potential cybersecurity threats, both from April 2025. And then compare that with OpenAI's Preparedness Framework V2, also hot off the press in April 2025.
It's a good comparison.
Yeah, consider this your fast track to understanding a really vital and, frankly, rapidly changing field.
And what makes looking at these two frameworks so valuable, I think, is that they offer, well, distinct but also kind of complementary ways of thinking about AI safety. By getting a handle on their core ideas, the safeguards they're proposing, you, the listener, can develop a much clearer picture of the hurdles involved. And crucially, some potential ways forward, regardless of your own technical background.
Okay, great. So let's dive into DeepMind first. Their strategy seems to kick off with a pretty fundamental question. Who or what is actually steering the danger?
That's right. DeepMind starts by sort of categorizing potential risks based on where they come from. They've laid out these 4 key risk buckets.
Okay.
There's misuse, that's, bad humans doing bad things intentionally. Then misalignment, where the AI itself might pursue harmful goals the creators didn't intend.
The AI going off script, basically.
You're sort of, yeah. Then mistakes, just plain old errors or bugs. And finally, structural risks, which arise from bigger societal things like economic incentives.
Right.
But what's really interesting is their current focus. They're really zoning in on misuse and misalignment right now.
And why those two specifically? Is there a reason they're prioritized?
Yeah, DeepMind's thinking is that these are the risks that are likely to scale most dramatically as AI models just get more and more powerful.
Okay.
As AI gains more abilities, the potential for both people using it maliciously and for it acting autonomously in unintended, perhaps harmful ways, just grows significantly faster than, say, simple bugs.
That makes sense. So, okay, how is DeepMind actually building defenses? What's the plan?
They've come up with this 2-layer, 6-step shield. You can kind of picture it like a security system with multiple lines of defense.
Okay, 2 layers. What's layer 1?
Layer 1 is all about blocking human misuse, and it has 3 main parts. First, they run what they call dangerous capability tests.
Red teaming, essentially.
Exactly. Their red teams actively poke and prod their models to see what dangerous things they might be able to do. A key example they gave was asking their model, Gemini, can you write undetectable polymorphic malware?
Wow, okay. That's malware that changes itself to avoid getting caught, right?
Precisely. It's a serious capability.
So what's the trigger point? When do they get really worried about a capability like that?
Their benchmark, their threshold is this. If the model makes a skilled attacker more than 10 times as efficient, so saves them more than 10x the usual time or skill needed, then that capability is flagged as potentially dangerous.
A 10x speed up or skill reduction.
Okay.
Yeah. And to measure this, they use 50 secret capture the flag challenges, CTF challenges.
Oh, like cybersecurity puzzles.
Exactly. These challenges test different stages of a cyber attack, like reconnaissance, finding hidden info, weaponization, creating the exploit, evasion, dodging detection systems.
Right.
And they mentioned their Gemini Flash model managed to solve 11 out of these 50 challenges.
Okay, 11 out of 50. What did that specific score tell them? Was that alarming?
Well, it indicated a potential risk, something that definitely needed managing within that first block human misuse layer. But it wasn't, code red at that point. It required controls, but not necessarily halting everything.
Got it. And the other steps in that first layer, you said 3 parts. Right. So after the testing, you have access controls. If a model does show potentially dangerous abilities based on those tests, its access gets restricted. We're talking lockdown APIs, strict vetting of who gets to use it.
Tightening the reins.
Exactly. And finally, there's weight security. This is crucial. The actual model files, the weights, are stored on heavily secured, audited servers. And critically, no single engineer has complete independent access to them.
So no one person can just walk off with the powerful model.
That's the idea. Securing the model files themselves is absolutely key to preventing unauthorized copying and misuse.
Okay, that first layer makes a lot of sense. Secure the tools, vet the users, lock down the core files. What about layer 2? Guarding against the AI itself going rogue, the misalignment problem.
Right. The second layer is about ensuring the model behaves as intended, especially as it gets super capable. It also has 3 steps. First is something they call amplified oversight.
Amplified oversight, what's that?
The idea here is that, beyond a certain point, an AI might become so complex that a single human expert just can't fully follow its technical reasoning anymore. It gets too dense too fast.
Right, too hard to audit directly.
Exactly. So DeepMind uses this clever method where they have 2 versions of the same model, let's say Model A and Model B, debate an answer or a solution.
Uh-huh.
A human judge then looks at the arguments each model makes, rather than trying to wade through potentially millions of lines of code or super complex outputs.
So the judge sees the reasoning explained, not the raw computation.
Precisely. It's like having 2 AI experts argue their case in hopefully more understandable terms, making it easier for the human to spot flaws or unsafe logic.
That is a really smart way to handle that scaling complexity problem. Like AI lawyers presenting their cases. And you mentioned there was a bonus to this debate system.
Yes, exactly. This whole debate process generates a ton of really useful data about what good reasoning looks like versus bad or unsafe reasoning. DeepMind can then use this data to train simpler, cheaper monitor bots. These monitors can watch the regular outputs of their main models in real time and flag only the potentially problematic stuff for human review.
So it makes the ongoing safety checks much more scalable.
Much more scalable, yes. The second step in this layer is robust training. Basically, the tricky or risky scenarios, the hard cases that come up during those debates, they get fed back into the training data.
Learning from mistakes or near mistakes.
Exactly. It helps the models learn from these edge cases and makes their internal safety protocols stronger over time. And the final step is runtime shields.
Okay, what are those?
These are automated filters that check basically every live output a model produces. If an output seems uncertain or potentially unsafe, it gets automatically escalated to a slower but maybe smarter checker system.
Like a second opinion from another AI?
Sort of. And, importantly, every single output is recorded in a tamper-proof log, so you have a complete audit trail of everything the model has ever generated live.
Okay, wow. So just to recap DeepMind then, they're mapping things against 7 stages of the cyber kill chain, thinking in those 4 risk buckets, applying this 6-step shield across 2 layers, and that key trigger is the 10x danger threshold for attacker efficiency.
That's a great summary.
It feels like a very process-focused approach, really concentrating on making each step of a potential attack significantly harder, right?
Precisely. They're trying to add friction all along the potential attack path, and it's also really important to grasp their view on alignment.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, some people in the field believe that if we can just perfectly align AI with human values, make it inherently good, then we won't need to worry so much about misuse.
Because a good AI wouldn't help a bad person.
That's the hope. But DeepMind explicitly pushes back on that. They argue that even a perfectly aligned AI, if it falls into the hands of a determined bad actor, can still be weaponized or used for harmful ends.
So alignment isn't enough on its own.
Not according to DeepMind. That's why both layers of their shield, blocking the misuse and guarding against the misalignment, remain absolutely essential in their framework. Their actor-centric view really highlights that perfect AI niceness isn't a silver bullet against human malice. It's a crucial point for any complete security strategy.
Right, okay. That's a clear picture of DeepMind's strategy. Let's shift gears now and look at OpenAI's Preparedness Framework v2. Their approach feels maybe centered more on the potential impact of AI capabilities.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. OpenAI is very focused on identifying and controlling AI abilities that could cause severe harm. We're talking catastrophic events, things leading potentially to thousands of deaths or hundreds of billions of dollars in economic damage.
Okay, that's a high bar.
It is. Their guiding principle, their mantra seems to be track the few, guard like crazy, and prove it works.
Track the few. So they're not trying to track everything.
No, exactly. Instead of trying to map and mitigate every conceivable vulnerability, they're identifying a small number of very high-stakes danger zones, or what they call tracked categories.
Okay.
OpenAI's focus on this catastrophic potential really underscores the need to prioritize defenses against the absolute highest impact AI capabilities, even if they seem maybe less immediate than other threats. It's about preventing the worst possible outcomes.
So what are these key danger zones OpenAI is tracking right now?
They currently track three main areas. First, biochemical risks. Second, cybersecurity risks. And third, AI self-improvement risks.
Okay, biochem, cyber, self-improvement.
And for each of these, they define both a high and a critical threshold. They give specific examples of what could go wrong at each level to make it concrete.
Can you give an example, say, for biochemical?
Sure. In the biochemical area, a high threshold might be, say, a model giving a determined biology student enough information to successfully recreate an existing dangerous toxin.
Okay, bad, but maybe manageable. What's critical?
The critical threshold is far more serious. That's like a model actively helping an expert design a completely new, highly dangerous biothreat. Or even getting to the point where an AI could autonomously order specialized lab equipment online, potentially paving the way for, DIY pandemics.
Yeah, that's genuinely terrifying. Okay, what about in cybersecurity? What are the levels there?
In cyber, the high threshold is defined as when a model can automate end-to-end hacks against reasonably well-protected, hardened targets, taking a known vulnerability and exploiting it automatically, basically.
Right, and critical.
The critical level is when an AI could, on its own, find previously unknown vulnerabilities, those zero-day exploits we hear about.
The ones nobody knows how to defend against yet.
Exactly. And not just find them, but then launch novel cyber attacks against critical infrastructure like power grids or communication networks, all without direct human intervention. This could potentially cause, internet-scale ransomware events or massive grid sabotage.
Okay, truly critical infrastructure threats. And the third category, AI self-improvement. That sounds a bit more abstract.
It does, but the potential consequences are, well, profound. The high threshold here is compared to something like every single researcher at OpenAI getting their own expert AI assistant, massively speeding up their R&D work.
Okay, a big productivity boost.
Right. But the critical threshold envisions something much more dramatic. Fully automated AI research and development. An AI designing better AI, potentially leading to a massive generational leap in AI capabilities in just a matter of weeks.
Like a runaway AI development spiral?
Potentially, yeah. A capability sprint that humans might not be able to understand, predict, or control once it starts.
Okay, so these are the areas they're watching closely. How does OpenAI even decide what becomes a tracked category? Surely there are lots of potential risks.
That's a good question. They have 5 specific filters they apply. First, the pathway to harm has to be plausible. You need a believable chain of events from the AI ability to severe harm.
Makes sense.
Second, it has to be measurable. They need to be able to actually create tests, evaluations, that can track the development of that specific risky ability over time.
So they can see it coming.
Hopefully, yes. Third, the potential harm has to be severe, meeting their high bar, thousands of deaths, or over $100 billion in losses.
Okay.
Fourth, it needs to be net new. Meaning, today's existing tools, non-AI tools, couldn't already achieve that same level of harm just as easily. It has to be a risk amplified specifically by AI.
Got it. And the last one.
Finally, the harm must be irremediable or instant. Basically, the kind of event where once it happens, it's either impossible or far too late to effectively respond or fix the damage. Think pandemics or critical infrastructure collapse.
Those are some pretty significant hurdles. A lot of potential risks wouldn't make it onto that tracked list then.
Exactly. They're really focusing on the potential catastrophes.
So once they've identified a risky skill that passes those filters, how do they actually measure its progress towards those high or critical thresholds?
They use a multi-layered evaluation approach. They start with scalable evils. These are fast, often automated tests that act like early warning signs, the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak.
Boot checks.
Right. If these canaries start chirping, indicating a potential issue is developing, they then move to deep dives.
Okay, more intensive testing.
Much more intensive. This involves more thorough human red teams, maybe even actual wet lab experiments for biological risks, or bringing in external white hat hackers to really stress test the cybersecurity capabilities.
Right.
The results from all these evaluations, the scalable ones and the deep dives, are then reviewed by their internal safety advisory group, or SAG.
The SAG. Okay, what's their role?
The SAG acts as the internal referee. They look at all the evaluation data, the red team reports, everything, and they make the crucial threshold call. They decide, is this capability still safely below the high threshold? Has it crossed into high? Or is it worryingly approaching the critical level?
So they're the final arbiters on the danger level. What happens when they make a call that a threshold has been crossed, let's say high?
Okay, so when a high threshold is crossed, their safeguards stack gets fully activated for that capability. This stack is basically a set of 3 defense layers.
3 layers again, okay.
First, malicious user shields. These include things like intensive refusal training to make the AI less likely to comply with harmful requests, techniques to make it harder to trick the AI into ignoring safety rules, those so-called jailbreaking attempts.
Right, people try that all the time.
Constantly, and also real-time monitoring for signs of misuse. Second, there are misaligned model shields. This involves methods for better understanding how the model is making decisions, creating isolated sandboxes for AI agents to operate in safely, implementing kill switches if things go wrong, and setting up hierarchical oversight systems.
Got it. And the third part of the stack.
Third is strong security controls. Things like zero trust network infrastructure, strong multi-factor authentication protecting the actual model weights, and having a dedicated 24/7 security operations center watching everything.
That's a comprehensive stack for the high level.
Yeah.
What if the SAG determines a capability has hit critical?
If a critical capability is detected, the response is much more drastic. OpenAI states they will pause development on that specific capability area entirely.
Pause development. Wow.
Yes, pause it until they can demonstrate convincingly that equivalent strength safety controls are working effectively internally within their own labs first. Basically, prove they can contain it before developing it further.
That's a pretty significant commitment to hitting the brakes if things look too dangerous.
Yeah.
It really sounds like they're laser focused on pinpointing those absolute worst case scenarios and building specific layered defenses against them. You also mentioned a research watch list. What's that about?
Yeah, the research watch list covers areas that aren't currently dangerous enough to meet their tracked category criteria, but which OpenAI sees as having the potential to become serious risks in the future.
Things to keep an eye on.
Exactly. Examples they list include things like long-range autonomy, where maybe a single instruction to an AI could lead to weeks of complex, independent action. Or sandbagging.
Sandbagging.
Yeah.
Like the AI deliberately hiding its abilities.
Precisely. The concern that a model might intentionally perform poorly on safety evaluations to conceal its true, perhaps dangerous capabilities, also on the list. Autonomous replication and adaptation, AI copying itself and evolving online, undermining safeguards, AI learning to bypass its own safety controls or hide malicious code, and even acquiring sensitive nuclear radiological know-how.
Okay, so these are potential future flashpoints. What are they doing about them now?
For these watch list items, OpenAI is actively funding research. They're trying to better understand the potential threats, figure out how you would even evaluate these capabilities if they emerged, and start developing potential mitigation strategies before they become immediate critical risks. It's proactive threat modeling.
Got it. So for OpenAI, the key numbers to kind of hang on to are those 3 tracked danger zones, the 5 filters to decide what gets tracked, the 2 big threat levels, high and critical, and that crucial internal referee, the SAG, which has the power to hit pause.
That sums it up well.
Their focus seems very much on identifying those major red flags before powerful new abilities get out into the world, and then rigorously verifying that their safety nets actually work.
Exactly. It's a more targeted strategy, you could say, compared to DeepMind's broader process focus. OpenAI is prioritizing the prevention of the most extreme catastrophic outcomes by intensely monitoring these specific high-impact capabilities.
Okay, so we've looked at both DeepMind and OpenAI in some detail. As we compare them, where do you see the common ground? Where do they agree?
There's definitely a significant common ground, which is encouraging. Both labs clearly explicitly recognize that AI-powered hacking and other misuse vectors are serious, growing threats. That's baseline.
Right.
They also both emphasize the importance of transparency, publishing their findings, like the papers we're discussing, and importantly, inviting external security researchers, red teams, to actually test their systems. They know they can't find all the flaws themselves.
Okay, transparency and external testing. What else?
And they both fundamentally understand that safety protocols can't be static. You can't just write a rule book today and expect it to work for tomorrow's AI. Safety measures have to continuously evolve and adapt as the AI models themselves become more advanced and capable.
Constant vigilance and adaptation. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the shared ground. What about the key differences? Where do their strategies really diverge?
I think one of the core differences lies in what they prioritize focusing on. As we discussed, DeepMind seems more focused on the process of an attack, identifying the typical steps in, say, a cyber attack kill chain, and then working to make each of those steps harder or less efficient for an attacker.
Disrupting the sequence.
Exactly. OpenAI, on the other hand, appears more focused on the potential impact, the severity of the harm that could ultimately be caused by certain specific AI capabilities, perhaps regardless of the exact steps an attacker takes to get there.
Process versus impact. That's a clear distinction. What else?
Another key difference is what triggers their highest levels of alert or intervention. For DeepMind, the big concern kicks in when a model offers that significant boost in attacker efficiency, that 10x reduction in time or skill required at any stage of a hack.
The 10x rule.
Right. For OpenAI, the major triggers are based on reaching a predefined critical level of AI capability within one of their specific tracked danger zones, like designing novel bioweapons or enabling autonomous cyber attacks on infrastructure.
So efficiency gain versus absolute capability threshold.
Exactly. And finally, while the specifics of their governance structures differ somewhat, DeepMind has its frontier safety team working with external red teams, while OpenAI has its internal safety advisory group reporting up to the board. The crucial point is that both labs have established internal mechanisms with the authority, at least on paper, to pause or significantly alter development if safety concerns reach a critical point.
So different triggers, different focal points, process versus impact, efficiency versus capability, but both have built-in emergency brakes.
That's a good way to think about it.
So if I were to summarize that difference simply, maybe DeepMind is trying to make the whole hacking process much slower and more difficult across the board,
Uh-huh.
whereas OpenAI is specifically hunting for those potential nuke codes, those catastrophic capabilities, and trying to lock them down before they're even fully developed.
That's a really useful analogy, I think. Yeah, it captures the essence of that impact focus versus process focus distinction quite well.
Okay, now this is all fascinating stuff happening at the cutting edge of AI development. But let's bring it back down to earth. What are some practical takeaways here for you, the listener, even if you're not running a major AI lab or, a cybersecurity firm?
That's the critical question, isn't it? Because while these are frameworks from huge AI companies, the underlying ideas, the fundamental principles, actually offer really valuable lessons for pretty much anyone navigating this age of increasingly powerful AI.
Right.
We can adapt some of their core concepts into actionable steps, things individuals or maybe smaller teams can think about. I've got 5 practical steps here inspired by their approaches.
Okay, let's hear them. 5 takeaways.
All right. First, map your own kill chain. Just like DeepMind analyzes the stages of a complex cyber attack, you can think about the steps involved in a potential vulnerability in your own life or work.
How so? Give me an example.
Okay, say you're worried about falling for a sophisticated online scam. What are the typical stages involved there? There's usually an initial contact, maybe an email or message, then a stage of building trust or urgency, then the request for sensitive information or money, then the actual transfer or data loss. By mapping out those steps for scams you might be susceptible to, you can start to identify where you are most vulnerable, which step is your weakest link. Understanding the process helps you defend it.
That makes sense. It's about knowing the likely attack path for you personally. Okay, let's take away number 2.
Second, run a bottleneck drill. This is inspired by DeepMind's efficiency metric. Experiment, maybe carefully, with using readily available AI tools for tasks that you know could be risky if done poorly or with malicious intent.
Okay, like what?
For example, you could try using an AI chatbot to generate a very persuasive but maybe subtly misleading social media post or email draft on a sensitive topic. See how quickly and effectively it can do that compared to how long it would take you or someone else to write something similar manually.
So see where AI provides a massive speed or persuasion advantage for potentially negative uses.
Exactly. It helps you understand where AI could significantly amplify existing risks in your world by drastically reducing the time or effort needed the bottleneck.
Interesting. A way to sort of stress test your own susceptibility to AI-accelerated threats.
Okay.
Okay, what's number 3?
Third, set danger lines. This borrows from OpenAI's idea of setting clear thresholds for high and critical capabilities. Think about defining your own personal or maybe professional thresholds for what you consider risky AI capabilities or information exposure.
Personal danger lines.
Yeah. For instance, what level of AI-generated content would make you start to question its authenticity or trustworthiness? At what point would you become genuinely concerned about the spread of AI-generated misinformation in your community or field? Defining these tripwires in advance helps you recognize when a line might be getting crossed.
So establishing your own personal thresholds for AI-related risks. I like that. Number 4.
Fourth, form a mini SAG. This draws inspiration from OpenAI's safety advisory group, but on a much smaller scale. Basically, make it a habit to seek a second opinion from a trusted friend, a knowledgeable colleague, maybe even a family member, before acting on potentially suspicious information, or maybe before using AI in particularly sensitive situations.
Let's get another set of eyes on it.
Exactly. Even just one other trusted person reviewing something can provide really valuable oversight. They might spot risks or biases or potential downsides that you overlooked on your own. It's a simple but powerful check.
That's a great reminder about just basic critical thinking and the value of different perspectives, especially when dealing with convincing AI outputs. Okay, and the final takeaway, number 5.
Fifth, and this is important, publish a dual-use policy for yourself or maybe your team. Just like these AI labs are constantly grappling with the fact that their powerful technology can be used for immense good or significant harm.
The dual-use problem.
Right. You should consciously define for yourself how you will, and, just as importantly, how you will not use AI tools. Make explicit decisions. For example, commit to avoiding prompts or uses that could foreseeably create harm, spread dangerous misinformation, or violate ethical guidelines you believe in.
So drawing your own ethical lines in the sand about AI use.
Precisely. And maybe even consider just mentally noting down instances where you were tempted to use AI in a way that felt borderline. It's a way to increase your own awareness of the potential misuses, even the small ones.
Those are all really practical, adaptable takeaways. Map your kill chain, run bottleneck drills, set danger lines, get a second opinion, and define your own use policy. It really is about taking these big, high-level concepts of risk assessment and mitigation and scaling them down to apply in our own lives and work.
Exactly. It's about fostering a similar kind of safety mindset.
So to wrap things up then, DeepMind and OpenAI, they're clearly approaching this massive challenge of AI security from slightly different angles.
Yeah.
One focusing more on the attack process, the other on the potential catastrophic impact. But both offer incredibly valuable frameworks for helping us all understand and hopefully address the growing complexities here.
Absolutely. DeepMind's focus on strengthening every step of a potential attack, making the whole thing harder, and OpenAI's intense focus on identifying and building safeguards against those most potentially catastrophic capabilities together, they give us a pretty comprehensive view of the kinds of threats we need to consider.
Right.
And understanding both of these approaches, even at a high level, can really empower you, the listener, to think more critically and proactively about AI risks in your own context.
And that really brings us neatly to our final thought for you today. As AI continues its incredibly rapid evolution, and let's face it, it shows no signs of slowing down, how will your own personal security framework need to adapt to stay ahead of the curve? What are the specific danger lines you will be watching for in your own life, in your work, as AI becomes even more deeply integrated into our daily routines?
It's a crucial question.
It really is. Something worth mulling over as we all navigate this increasingly AI-driven world. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.